Trooper Proctor, you were notified.
I am not Trooper Proctor.
I'm sorry. No, you're not. Sergeant Buchnick.
Sergeant Buchanan.
How do I say it?
Buchanan.
I'll give that a shot.
It's fine.
Buchanan?
Yes.
Is that better?
That's better. Thank you.
If I screw it up again, please.
What?
Thank you. Trooper Proctor, you were notified.
I am not Trooper Proctor.
I'm sorry.
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
Okay. How is everybody? Wanted to talk to you today. Really ask the question, is Karen Reed's defense doomed? This has been what I think a really tough week for the defense in this case. Now, we don't know what Karen Reed's defense has cooked up, but we got a hint. There's breaking news. So there's been a filing by the Commonwealth, and I want to get into it. But before I get into it, I want to talk a little bit about what has been so devastating for Karen Reed. It's the tail light. It's the tail light all put back together except for one piece by the Massachusetts Crime Lab. And everybody who testified for the crime lab was extremely professional, could not be made to look lazy or inaccurate or sloppy. As much as Alan Jackson and David Unetti love to go after these witnesses, you failed to do this, you failed to do that. Everything was pretty much ship shape and order from the crime lab as far as the tail light and the glass, the drinking glass that John O'Keefe had in his hand. Exiting the car, we even saw the straw today. So you think about what the work it took to reassemble it, those little pieces, and what I've been calling the why come, meaning like, how come this? Why come this isn't like that sort of PR defense is kind of falling apart with like, well, why didn't they find the belt? Well, there's the belt. Why didn't they find the hat? Oh, there's the hat we saw today. Just one after the other. And then, like, if you caught the live I did the day before yesterday, not yesterday, but the day before, I talked about the timeline with the car. The Trooper Proctor couldn't get to the car. The CERT team was there at 4:56. So, you don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to put this case together. It seems so obvious. If there hadn't been an innocence fraud campaign, no one would be interested in this case. This is to me, the most open and shut case of really a woman where what people call relationship violence. The end of the relationship, John O'Keefe has had enough, says it's over, and she gets so angry, she runs into him and leaves him and then calls him up and screams at him. But so I've been talking about this defense team and showing you through the filing in Aiden, Turtle Boy, Carney's. Actually, his case, they asked for Karen Reed's 2 cell phones, and I've been showing you the relationship between David Yannetti, Alan Jackson, Karen Reed really spearheading her PR offensive and her harassment of the witnesses with this PR campaign and leaking info and leaking addresses and things that he would not have access to normally. And what was really shocking was the defense team for Karen Reed standing up in one of these hearings saying, oh no, we just said it was reported on that this happened. They made that reporting happen. They leaked the information to Aiden Carney. He reported on it. And then they came back and said, they came back to the court and told the court, well, it's been reported on. So it's not like we're leaking information to the public before a trial. We're not trying to play this out in the court of public opinion. We're not trying to taint the jury pool. Like really dirty tricks that I think there should be consequences for. So this filing today was super interesting to me from the Commonwealth. And they're going to argue it Monday at 8:30 a.m. So let me show you. Christina Rex reported on it. So she says the Commonwealth has filed a motion today to exclude the testimony of Dr. Marie Russell, a defense witness who plans to testify that John O'Keefe's injuries were consistent with that of an animal attack. In its motion, the Commonwealth argues that it received late notice of Dr. Russell's anticipated testimony and no specific documents outlining her opinion, which is required by state procedure. So I read this filing by the Commonwealth, and they have to show who their witnesses are, what they're going to testify to. Just like if the Commonwealth did this, the defense would be up in arms talking about due process. Well, there's also due process for the Commonwealth, and they're being denied this, I think, by giving no idea of how she's going to argue dog bites. And not showing any of her evidence or any of her reports. And this goes for, let me see, I think it's 4 other witnesses too. So it wasn't just that they were objecting to Dr. Russell, they were objecting to so many more of these witnesses. And I got to look into a few of them. I'm going to be on this because the witnesses that they have for the defense are super interesting. But I just got to take a peek today. So Commonwealth says defense attorneys previously stated in February 2024 hearing that they did not plan to pursue any claims that O'Keefe was attacked by a dog. Commonwealth says it was surprised and unfairly prejudiced when attorney Yannetti referenced a dog attack in opening statements. Commonwealth has also moved to receive reports and opinions of at least 3 other defense expert witnesses claiming defense has not cooperated with discovery in a timely manner. Both sides will argue this motion outside the presence of the jury on Monday morning, 8:30. And here's the full motion. I mean, it's like really super hard to read, but I'll give you an idea of who these witnesses are for the defense. And so the first one, there's not a lot of information, but we'll cover her, Marie Russell. I'm going to keep looking. So she's a filmmaker and assistant professor of emergency. Oh, this is Miss Russell. So this is the dog bite expert. Right. Assistant professor of pathology. And her expertise you see here is dog bites, soft wound tissues and infections, law enforcement and civilian gang violence, DV. You can see these things, correctional medicine, and police procedures, police overstepping their bounds, those kinds of things. So this looks like from the USC. So she's from the University of Southern California. Very left-wing place. Then we have, but more interestingly, is, let me look at my notes, Chris Van E., PhD in biomedical and mechanical engineering, and he seems to have been very involved with what I would call innocence fraud. Now, the Innocence Project has been trying to undo cases. They actually have a case that they're promoting now, the national organization is, on shaken baby syndrome. So trying to get what people who cause the end of the life of babies, I'm trying to say it in a YouTube-friendly way, out, off or out, and they're saying that shaken baby syndrome has been totally just been junk science, like everything, basically everything, whatever the strongest piece of evidence is, if it's a confession, it's going to be a false confession for the Innocence Project. So if it's DNA, it's been corrupted, or there's some other explanation for it. If it's an eyewitness, then eyewitnesses are so unreliable. If it's, whatever the strongest piece of evidence, they're going to go after. So with shaken baby syndrome, they're going to go after the science. And here he is in another case from the appeal. A New Jersey woman claimed innocence in shaken baby death, and now her conviction may get a second look. And spurred by an appeal investigation into Michelle Heal's controversial 2015 case. She was babysitting 14-year-old Mason Hess in 2012 when, according to Heal, his body suddenly went limp. She called 911. He has no movement in any parts of his body. His whole body is lifeless. In ambulance. So, and he was the expert helping her get out. This is one of his favorite things. You can see him in a couple of these shaken baby syndrome cases. So what I think of Dominic Dunn, who liked to say about these, he used to call them, these experts, whores of the court. And he said, I only cover the cases of the super rich because they're able to afford these experts that always fool the jury. And then he went on to call them, these experts, whores of the court. And so these experts can really impress juries with their credentials, and they're picking up sometimes anywhere, from hundreds of dollars an hour to thousands of dollars an hour to testify and to write reports for the defense. It's a very lucrative business field, being an expert like this. And last one, of course, and everyone who followed the Dan Markel case will appreciate this one, Daniel Wolf. And he's a PhD, and he's also a jury consultant, just like Just like our friend Charlie Adelson's, right? Josh Dubin, his jury consultant, and he works on high profile and large exposure litigation following such matters as antitrust, product liability, intellectual property, professional malpractice, environmentals, insecurities, and I don't know, and including automotive. So I guess that's where it comes in, biotech and medical. So basically you have to prove that you're really an expert in your field. You have to say what you're going to testify to. You're going to have to show your report or show your evidence that you're going to show the jury, and they haven't shown any of it. So there's two more that I haven't looked into, but I will get back to you on that. I thought that was super interesting. Thanks, Annalise, for becoming a member. I appreciate it. It allows me to do this show. Thank you. So before I want to get into yesterday's testimony, where we had one of the weirdest jury instructions. I've never heard a jury instruction like this before we heard the evidence. Can you guys hear me all right? I hope so. I hope it doesn't sound like, I'm sure it sounds like I'm in a tunnel because it's a super hot day in here in New York. So this was before they showed more photographs, more physical evidence, and here is Judge Canone giving the jury an instruction on the emotions that might come up. Let's take a listen.
Folks, the Commonwealth is introducing into evidence through this witness certain photographs that are not pleasant and may be considered graphic photos. Sometimes evidence is presented that creates an emotional reaction in jurors. For example, it's natural and understandable to feel sympathy and empathy when you hear about a person who was injured in some serious way or suffered in some way or who has passed away. But as jurors, you've taken an oath to follow the law, and I instruct you that you must separate any emotional reaction on your part from the informational value and weight of the evidence. You must not be influenced in any way by the nature of some of the testimony, and you must find the facts in this case based only on the evidence. You can't find facts or base your decision on sympathy, anger, passion, or prejudice, or pity for or against either side in this case. Rather, your verdict must be based solely on the evidence and my instructions on the law. All right, with that, Mr. Lally, those photos will be in evidence.
Okay, so, and then it goes, then we hear, so this was an awesome witness for the Commonwealth, Sergeant Yuri Buchanan, and everyone's wondering if he's going to testify in place of Proctor. You saw my opening where Alan Jackson called him Sergeant Proctor. He works alongside Sergeant Proctor. Is Sergeant Proctor going to testify in addition? Is instead the defense going to take Sergeant Proctor as their witness? And that would leave Lally open to asking leading questions in cross and maybe a little bit have more control over some of the negatives that Proctor brings. I'm sure they've been greatly exaggerated, but who knows? Maybe there are more negatives that we don't know about that they're waiting to present and have it be an explosive presentation in court. So I thought that was interesting. There was also, I thought, a really interesting moment in his testimony where he talks about interviewing Karen Reed at her parents' home. And this is what she says, and pay close attention to how the questioning ended. So take a listen. I thought this part of the testimony, It's a little bit more lengthy than the last clip, but take a listen.
All right, so I interrupted you, Sergeant, and I'm going to instruct you jurors, okay? We're about to hear testimony.
So this begins with another instruction. So these are in blue states. This used to be up to the defense to argue at the end of the trial because let's just be honest. One of the things that the prosecution had was emotion, feeling for the victim, all those things. It shouldn't have ever clouded a juror's judgment, but they would use those pictures. There's pictures of the victim and the state they were in after the accused did whatever they were accused of doing, to remind the jurors of what's at stake. And it was up to the defense to argue that they had to stick to the facts. And now it's like they get a little bit of extra help. Same thing here with her statements. I thought was very interesting. I've never heard an instruction like this either. But this is right before he talks, Sergeant Buchanan talks about interviewing Karen Reed at her parents' home, and gently, hadn't been read her Miranda rights. She gave these comments freely without the aid of a lawyer. And so they're going to say, so now the judge is going to be instructing the jury to think about that it could possibly be coerced, or she could be possibly intimidated by the sergeant, or basically some other reason why these statements could be false. I've never heard an instruction like this. I thought it was wild.
About statements allegedly made by the defendant, Karen Reed, allegedly concerning the crimes that are charged in this case. Before you may even consider any such statement as evidence, the Commonwealth must prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant made the statement that she's alleged to have made, and that she made it voluntarily, freely, and rationally. In determining whether any statement made by the defendant was voluntary or not, you may consider all the surrounding circumstances. These include when and where the statement was made, the nature of any conversations with the police or questioning by the police, and the defendant's physical and mental condition, including her intelligence, age, education, experience, and personality. Your decision does not turn upon any one factor. You must consider the totality of the surrounding circumstances. I'll instruct you about this again at the end of the case, but for purposes of, as you hear the testimony, that's the lens that you have to sort of hear it through. All right, with that, Mr. Lally.
Thank you.
So he's saying this could be all those things, age, education. So are factors in a false confession. Age, education, being intimidated, possibly being intimidated by the officer. I thought that was interesting. And I'm going to skip a little bit forward just to the part where she starts talking about what happened that night.
Observations she made of Mr. O'Keefe later on that morning, as far as any injuries to Mr. O'Keefe.
The defendant stated that while she was performing CPR, Mr. O'Keefe had sustained injuries and was bleeding from the nose and the mouth.
And if you recall, what, if anything, did she say about Mr. O'Keefe's eyes at that time?
The defendant stated that Mr. O'Keefe's eyes were swollen.
Is that both eyes? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, as the interview progressed, at some point, did you ask questions seeking further details?
Yes, I did.
And details about what specifically were you asking?
Once we got to the point in time where the defendant told me she did a 3-point turn, I asked her to walk through step by step of her operating the vehicle and exactly what she did. Prior to that, I asked her, so she was asked to give a step-by-step recollection of how she, what she did in manipulating the vehicle and leaving the scene.
And at that point, was the interview terminated?
Yes, it was.
So did you guys get that? So she was asked to do a reconstruction of what she did, every movement she made that night, a little detail that got left out just because it was just sort of a longer stretch and I wanted to cut it short for time. She said she didn't go into the house because her stomach was upset, meaning the Alberts house. And as soon as she said, I did a 3-point turn, I didn't see whether he went in. And, well, can you reenact that with your vehicle? Interview over, cut. And you see this a lot with defendants when they're asked to reconstruct things. It reminds me of Jennifer Pan. Does anyone know that case, the Canadian case? Where she had, it was a murder for hire of her parents. Her father lived and her mother, unfortunately, she caused the end of the life of her mother. And she was asked, she said she was tied up, like they did like a fake home invasion and to reenact the phone call she made with her hands tied behind her back, the cell phone call. And she miraculously was able to do it. But unfortunately for her, her father woke up from his coma and said she was never, she was always able to freely move about. So that ended that. But for a moment, she's one of the few that I've seen actually go through with these reconstructions. Most of the accused or the guilty won't, because that's where you get stuck in the details, reenacting the details of it. And the last thing that was really interesting about yesterday was just seeing, well, there's a lot of things, and there's some things that I'm skipping here. Actually, let's watch some of this. This is hold on one second. This is her at her parents' house, and her brother wipes off everything in the car but the tail light. You can take a look. So there she seems to be showing him something. They seem to be looking at something at the end of the car. Who could guess what that might be?
Thank you. Ms. Gilman, if you could pull up video 166 from the same exhibit 6. Ms. Gilman, if you could pause there just for a moment. Sergeant, do you recognize the person that just exited from that vehicle and behind the defendant's vehicle?
Yes, I do.
Do you recognize that to be?
As a defendant's brother.
Is that Ms. Gilman, if you could press play? Ms. Gilman, if I could have from the same exhibit 6, video 171.
Just a little light snow, right, guys? Just a little flurries.
Ms. Gilman, you can take that down. Mr. Officer, we can have the lights back on. Sergeant, from your review of those videos, at various points you observed the defendant's brother cleaning off the defendant's car, correct?
That's correct.
At any point in time, did you observe the defendant's brother cleaning off the area of the right rear passenger side's taillight of the defendant's car?
I did not.
Right. Which is also against the law not to clean that off. Thought that was pretty interesting. But then it gets into their drinking. And I wanted to show you these clips of them at the bar that night. We can take a look at it together, see what you observe about the body language between John O'Keefe. And it's really sad. You really do want to go back in time and grab John O'Keefe and beg him not to go with Karen Reed.
And Sergeant Jennings, you recognize what's up on the screen?
Yes, I do.
And if you could, using the way of the pointer, draw the jury's attention to what, if anything, significance you observed this still shot from the CF car.
We observe the victim, Mr. John O'Keefe, here. Appears to be communicating with the defendant here. Mr. Camerano is over here as well. Mr. Sullivan is down here as well. Mr. O'Keefe is wearing the gray light two-tone sweatshirt that I held up earlier, as well as the jeans.
And the next still shot is going to be. And similar to this, similar to the previous one, excuse me, Sergeant, do you recognize what's depicted in this still shot here?
Yes, it's, again, the victim on the other side of the defendant, still dressed in the same outfit, and the defendant standing in front of him.
And as far as the bar area adjacent to the defendant, what, if anything, of significance do you know about it?
The bar area is located near the taps, the draft beer taps at C.F. McCarthy's. So if you were to look at the bar from the street, that is the left side of the bar orientation on the way to the restrooms.
And I'm sorry, I should have been more specific. As far as the sort of shelf of the bar immediately adjacent to the defendant's left arm, what, if anything, do you observe that?
Here, I observe a cylindrical vase-style cocktail glass on the bar, as well as other beer bottles.
You can take that down. With reference to the C.F. McCarthy's video, Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would ask to publish certain portions of that. It's already been marked as Exhibit 50.
Okay.
Ms. Gilman, if you could, from the first video. If I could ask you to pull it up to about 7 minutes and 50 seconds. And Ms. Gilman, if you could pause just for a moment, I'm just going to ask you to play from 7:50 to about 8 minutes and 20 seconds in, but I may ask you to pause. Gilman, if you could pause there. Sergeant, as far as just, again, for orientation purposes, with reference to the entrance or exit, point of ingress, egress, for the bar, do you observe that somewhere within this video?
Yes, at the top of the screen is the front door to C.F. McCarthy's bar. And as we just viewed the two gentlemen walking in, they walked in through the front door, heading to the taps area, draft beer location of the bar.
And if you could, just using the laser pointer, direct your attention to that front door area you're talking about.
The front door area is located right here.
And with respect to those two individuals that came in, do you recognize those two individuals?
Yes, that is the victim, Mr. John O'Keefe, dressed in the same outfit as before, and Mr. Camerano.
If you could play that to about 8:20. Ms. Gilman, if I could ask you from the same exhibits, same exhibit 50, from the third video now. If I could ask you to go to about 6 minutes and 10 seconds in. And I'm going to ask you to play that till about 6 minutes and 43 seconds. If I could ask you to pause just there. As far as the individuals around Mr. O'Keefe and Mr. Camerano, do you observe or recognize anybody else in the bar area around them at this time?
Mr. O'Keefe is sitting next to Mr. Camerano. I believe Mr. Kurt Roberts is there as well, next to Mr. Camerano.
Now, from this time, we're at about 8:51 p.m. or so within the video, is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, as far as the timestamp on this video, what, if any, information were you provided when you retrieved this video on February 1st in relation to that time and its accuracy to or what time was?
During video surveillance extraction, we verified the time and date on the system, and that is to show us how far behind in the past or in the future. Sometimes devices are time-stamped that's in the future. It hasn't happened yet in real time, but the video is stamped so. So what we do is, prior to extracting video, we identify the difference in time between real time and video time. In this case, C.F. McCarthy's video was 12 minutes behind real time.
And thank you. And Ms. Gilman, if you could play this to about 6 minutes and 40 minutes. Just pause there briefly. Ms. Gilman. As far as anyone else within the area of the bar, the area of Mr. Roberts, anyone else?
I mean, just he's leaning back a little from her, little tilted, kiss on the cheek, rub on the back, just a little. You could maybe tell that they had a fight this morning just by the body language. I don't know. It's hard to know. Because I'm not looking at it with unbiased eyes. I have that information. So let me know if everyone who was there that night said that they saw nothing wrong. And what's interesting about that, as the feeling you get watching this footage, and I'm going to keep it brief on this because it's super, super long and we have so much to so much to cover. But the fact that she appears to not have, tiny woman, any alcohol seems to have no effect on her. You don't see her kind of swaying on her feet. She just, it's like, there's drink number 6, there's drink number 7 goes down, and all very quickly, one after another. And the effect was intense, at least on me and the audience watching it live with me. We all couldn't believe it. We're all just sitting there watching her have drink after drink after drink with no effect. And you think, well, that's probably enough. Oh, one more. And even when you know it's going to end at 9, and of course end at the waterfall. It's bizarre to watch her. Really, just she must. I mean, the only conclusion I can make, and from the testimony of the witnesses who were there that night, none of them said, "Oh, that night was really out of the ordinary. Karen Reed was drinking more than usual. We all wondered why she was drinking so much." That must have been regular for her to really be able to drink quite a bit. So this brings a little gravitas to my theory that she wasn't really out. I believe Karen Reed when she says I wasn't in my right mind. They're not saying I wasn't in my right mind. I don't believe that alcohol was the key factor in here. I believe that her disordered, antisocial personality was the real root of this. And she's lucky she has alcohol to at least blame some of it on. But at the end of the day, she seemed really to get up, wipe her eyes, seemed really like humiliated by it. Like it was a hard day for her, meaning that that all the heartbreaking photos that you can see her there. You can see her rolling her eyes, rubbing her eyes, rolling her eyes, rubbing her eyes. It's the public humiliation that the narcissist in her just can't handle. It's one thing to say that I willfully ran my boyfriend down. It's another thing to say that I drink too much, right? That loss of control. She seems almost proud. She's proud of the fact that she ended John O'Keefe's life. So that seemed to be the testimony that took a little toll on her. But let's get into some of the more interesting stuff that went on today. Hold on one second, guys. So what made also this Sergeant Buchanan such an excellent witness? He has a military background. He forgets nothing. His answers are short and to the point and specific, and very hard to take him down a road that he's going to be trapped in. And Alan Jackson, the nice Alan Jackson was gone, and the tough Alan Jackson, the Alan Jackson that's going to make the snide remarks, was back, and not without a admonishment from the judge in this, which was, so let's take,
Video speaks for itself.
Let's take a look at Alan Jackson getting admonished by the judge.
Yeah, it does.
No.
Objection, Your Honor.
The objection sustained. No commenting, Mr. Jackson. We've talked about that.
So that is huge. So that means we've talked about this at sidebar. And we may see it again because I'm going to go over his cross-examination right now, but I wanted to make sure that we didn't miss that point because it's really a key point of what's going on in court. The judge has had enough. She's publicly admonished the defense team twice that I can think of. Once telling Yannetti no more correct or of course. Was it correct or of course? I can't remember. I think it was correct. No more of that. Oh, no. Or I think maybe it was of course. I can't remember. Let me know in the comments. Something like that. Some remark like that. And here with Jackson, she had told him privately. He didn't listen. Like I said this morning, the defense team are perpetual line steppers, line crossers, and she had enough. And lawyers do not like being admonished publicly by the judge in front of the jury. That is not a happy moment if you're a lawyer and you work to avoid it at all costs. But because this judge has laid down so much for this defense and really accommodated them in every way. I mean, look at them. They're in this tiny room, tiny little courtroom because of the defense. Who in their right mind would have approved that ridiculous, right? Submission to the court. But she did. Thanks, Heisenberg. Says Karen knew the exact pattern in reverse and not touch John's car when it was time to leave that morning. She had to get as close as possible. We all know why you did that, Karen. Guilty. Yeah, thanks, Heisenberg. We're going to take a look at that now. It's in cross-examination of Sergeant Buchanan. Let's take a look now. And thanks, Innocence Fraud Watch, for that clip. Wait, hold on one second. Let me just get up to... Hold on one sec. So let us go back. I may have had it.
You indicated that.
Okay, hold on one second. I'm sorry for not having this queued up properly.
Video that y'all talked.
I'm back. Have one moment.
Yes.
On January 16th, 2020, need him, please. But any other troopers from your office, who, if anyone else, was there with yourself and
With Ring asking for those logs.
I'll call it. Is it correct?
Okay, so this is interesting. So there is a bunch of missing Ring footage, believe it or not. So here is where Jackson starts about the Ring footage. Let me back it up. The missing Ring footage and how they got it. And of course, Trooper Proctor is made to be the devil, but I thought we'd watch Alan Jackson's cross together.
Sergeant Buchanan, I want to start with one of the latter things that you discussed with Mr. Lally. That's specific to the Ring video that y'all talked about this morning. Do you have that in mind?
I do.
The search warrant that produced, and just so we're clear, I'm talking about the specific Ring video or series of videos that were associated with one Meadows, John O'Keefe's home.
Okay.
Okay. You didn't write the search warrant for those Ring videos, did you?
I did not.
You were not the affiant for those search warrants.
I was not.
Who was?
So of course it's going to be Sergeant Proctor. That's more Brooklyn. I can't get this accent, but maybe I will by the end of the trial, which is going to be the end of June. But what I was thinking today, why they didn't charge Karen Reed with destruction of evidence in this case, and probably because they haven't been able to prove it. The children, I believe that the niece testified she didn't know whether Karen Reed had access to the ring footage, but we know John O'Keefe didn't remove that footage. So that leaves, and I don't believe the children had access to that, to the ring camera. So that leaves her father or Karen Reed. But it's one of those details that makes it look like she has consciousness of guilt. So it may not be, the Commonwealth may not be able to prove this to the standard beyond a reasonable doubt, but they made sure that they got it into evidence that the jury knows that there's this missing ring footage. That would be very damning to have Karen Reed show Carrie Roberts her taillight. Gone. Karen Reed pulling in after leaving 34 Fairview into John O'Keefe's home driveway. Gone. All we have is her pulling out where she love taps. This is what Heisenberg was just talking about. Barely touches John O'Keefe's car. And when she was asked by, this was on day 20, not today, how she broke the taillight of her car, she said, "Oh, you all saw it. I when I bumped into John O'Keefe's car, but there were no pieces. And yet there are pieces all over 34 Fairview. So much so that they kept finding pieces later. You know, it wasn't all found in one shot. After the snow melt, then they found more pieces. So I don't think anyone's going to buy that. You know, I'm shocked that anyone's buying this. I shouldn't be, because I've seen so many of these innocence fraud campaigns. I've seen so many smart people get groomed and conned by these campaigns. I shouldn't be shocked, but I'm really shocked by this one. This seems like it has more evidence in this case than many of the cases that I talk about. Certainly, it seems so overwhelming to me. But I guess if you're presented it as a conspiracy, then you're always looking for these little incongruencies. I don't know. I really don't understand. There's even, I think I won't talk about it on this episode, but I will talk about it, that there is a rumor going around that the wrong sneaker was shown and that John O'Keefe actually had a black sole to his sneaker. And what I think that is I think it's really a shadow and ice covering the sole. But I'll show it to you guys some other time and let you make a decision.
The author of the search warrant and the affiant.
It was Trooper Mike Proctor.
Who received the actual ring video or videos from the Ring Corporation?
It was Trooper Mike Proctor received it.
And who ultimately either logged those into evidence or controlled those once they were received from the Ring Corporation?
I believe it was Trooper Mike Proctor.
And ultimately, Sergeant Butnick, you did note that in addition to just the physical videos themselves, that login information and login keystrokes, et cetera, were requested from the Ring Corporation as well, correct?
There was discussion with Ring asking for those logs.
I'll call it, is it correct to say an activity log?
That's what was requested, yes, activity log, yes.
So ultimately, the activity log would show who logs in, who accesses the data, things of that nature, correct? Or at least that was the hope.
That is what was requested.
All right. It would also show logging in and executing deletions, manipulating the log files, things of that nature, correct?
That is what was requested, yes.
When you reviewed those log or activity logs, there was no evidence revealed that my client ever logged into that account, correct?
There was no activity logs provided by Ring.
So you have zero.
Wow, they left no evidence of the activity logs too. Those were deleted too. Boy, that can be twisted. So you have no evidence that my client did this. Well, yeah, there's no evidence because that was removed too. Not sus at all. Gotta kind of laugh at some of this stuff. Thank you, nothing. Ridiculous, right? But here's Alan Jackson. And I was curious, I think he was really revved up for Trooper Proctor and this aggression. And I think this may work on a California jury, but I don't think this is going to go so well for, I don't know. You can never predict which way a jury is going to go, but what I know of the people who live in this area, I'm familiar with it. I don't think that this would be an attractive style of lawyer to have.
Isn't it true that Ring contacted Trooper Proctor and indicated that they had created a Dropbox folder that contained the evidence that had been sought in the search warrant?
Objection.
Sustained.
Isn't it true that the search warrant returned?
You know what I'm wondering? So isn't it true a search warrant returned? Hold that in mind. But what I'm wondering is this Trooper Proctor's cross-examination? And is that the reason Alan Jackson called Sergeant Buchanan Trooper Proctor? Was it written in his exam? That's the way they write a cross-examination and they read it. And if that's true, it's pretty interesting. So it makes me think that they're not gonna be able to call Proctor as their own witness. That'll be interesting. Let's see how it goes. They certainly, what is on the table is that if the judge agrees with the Commonwealth that this is egregious, that the defense, the way that they handled their witnesses, not handing over any of the evidence or any of the testimony that they plan to elicit from these witnesses, they could get some kind of legal reprimand. But curious to see what else is at stake. I would love to talk to a lawyer about what else is at stake should the judge rule with the Commonwealth. Does that mean also that the witnesses, I would think that it would mean that the witnesses can't testify because the Commonwealth has not been given enough time to prepare.
Specified account information, video recordings, and number 3, activity logs associated with video recordings for all times displayed in UTC.
I'm not aware of that, no.
Do you recall that activity logs were in fact provided from the Ring Corporation?
I do not recall that, no.
Okay. May I approach briefly?
Yes.
Take a look, Sergeant, at that paragraph with my fingers on it. It's about the 3rd paragraph down the middle of the page, and review that to yourself and let me know when you're finished.
You can see he's taking his time. He's not going to be caught in any traps, this guy. Eisenberg says her brother not brushing off the snow from the right taillight is even more suspicious. That's very damaging against Karen as well. Yeah, that was a video I didn't expect. I didn't expect. Certainly wasn't out in the free Karen Reed, free Karen Reed
Have you had an
propaganda.
opportunity to review that?
Yes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. Does this refresh your recollection as to the items received from the Ring Corporation?
That is the first time I saw that document, so it does not refresh my recollection. I simply read it.
So do you have a recollection as you sit here that in fact during the course of your investigation, the three items that you received from the Ring Corporation were the account information, the video recordings, and quote, activity logs associated with the video recordings, all times displayed in UTC?
To the extent of its availability, as it says in that document.
Okay. The long and short of it is, during the
This guy's not falling for all the tricks. They're like, we would provide you with the activity log where we plan to provide you with it, should it be available. Oh, they're so underhanded, this defense team, right? I mean, that's the feeling I get.
the entire course of your investigation, you never revealed that investigation never revealed any evidence whatsoever that my client ever even accessed the account information for the Ring account associated with this search warrant, correct?
Nothing provided by Ring proved or suggested or proved any evidence of that type of activity, no.
Trooper Proctor, you were notified.
I am not Trooper Proctor.
I'm sorry.
There you go. So it makes me think that this was some of the cross-examination for Trooper Proctor. What do you guys think? Let me know what you think.
No, you're not. Sergeant Buchnick.
Sergeant Buchanan.
How do I say it?
Buchanan.
I'll give that
Can't.
a shot.
It's fine.
Buchanan?
Yes,
Is that better?
that's better. Thank you.
If I screw it up again, please. On January 29th, you were notified about a Boston police officer found gravely injured outside the home of 34 Fairview at about 6:40 in the morning. Was that your testimony?
That is not.
What time were you notified?
I was not notified it was a Boston police officer.
So you didn't have that information upon the first notification?
I did not.
Okay, what information did you have?
There was a male party in the snowbank, possibly of a heart attack.
At what point did you learn that the individual was, in fact, a sworn Boston police officer?
I do not know exactly when I learned that he was a Boston police officer.
I think it was during that day or the following day.
It was most likely that day, either. Yeah.
Fair enough. Trooper Proctor was ultimately assigned as what did you call him? Not lead investigator, but case officer?
That's correct.
He was assigned on the 29th, correct?
He was on call from 7 a.m. on January 28th until 7 a.m. on January 29th.
So his assignment was.
Listen to this. So his assignment. So Alan Jackson's going to keep making it as if Proctor was assigned this as if it's a conspiracy. And Buchanan very smartly is like, look, he was working, Proctor was working, and that's when he got the call, and that's when he went. No one gets assigned anything. When a call comes in, that's how you get assigned it. There's no conspiracy here. Look how he dampens. So just watch this. I'm just going to go back a few seconds and watch Alan Jackson try to make this a conspiracy and watch Buchanan not go for it.
From 7 a.m. on January 28th until 7 a.m. on January 29th.
So his assignment was, he was assigned on the 29th because he was on call.
He was on call. His assignment took effect when the schedule came out back in mid-December.
Okay. Well, he wouldn't be assigned.
So Buchanan's aware of this campaign, and he's saying he had his schedule back in mid-December. Just as fate had it, the call came in and he took it. He's very aware of this campaign. He's very aware of how Alan Jackson is trying to trap him. He's not going to go down these roads. Awesome witness.
Assigned to this investigation until there was a need for the investigation, right? And that's all I'm getting to. I mean, once the call came in, he was the assigned case agent.
Once the calls come in, the person that's on call is automatically assigned that case.
All right. Did you personally, as his supervisor, did you personally respond to 34 Fairview at any point on January 29th?
No, I did not.
Did Trooper Proctor, at your direction or on his own, ever respond to 34 Fairview Road at any time on January 29th?
No, he did not.
Based on your initial investigation, and I'm talking about going way back.
So this is a great line of questioning. This is some great no traction Jackson stuff we're going to get into here. So you didn't go into 34 Fairview. Wait, hold on. Let me back up. To fully give Alan no traction Jackson his due, you didn't rope off a 200-mile radius from 34 Fairview and start interviewing, taking pictures of every house within that 200-mile radius. You didn't rope that off as a crime scene? No, sir. You didn't take any pictures of any house in the 200-mile radius of 34 Fairview. No. You didn't take any pictures inside 34 Fairview. Well, that's not where the crime was. Yes, we went inside and we interviewed them as witnesses to see if they saw anything. If they were sus, certainly I think we would have gone that way. But our investigation didn't take us down that road. All the roads led, I mean, no pun intended, to Karen Reed.
Back, Sergeant, on your initial investigation, by 10 or 10:30 in the morning, 10:40 in the morning, it was your belief that Mr. O'Keefe had been struck in the face by a person. That was your initial understanding of the circumstances surrounding the investigation, correct?
My initial understanding was that the defendant stated that she hit him. We did not know the...
Sergeant, you hadn't even met my client at that point. You hadn't interviewed a single witness by 10:41 in the morning, correct? Not one witness.
That's not correct. We had already interviewed the first responders.
Okay.
There's another terrible moment for Alan Jackson. Right? You didn't interview. No, we'd already gone through interviewing all the first responders by 10:41 in the morning. Sorry, we're just finishing off our coffee. We're just getting warmed up. Excuse me, Alan Jackson. And you can see the way Buchanan turns and faces the jury. Doesn't do it overtly, just very naturally, very relaxed, and just honestly explains himself. And I know all the Karen readers are LOLing out there when I say honestly, because everything's a conspiracy and over 100 people are in on it, but okay. This is the way I see it. Honestly, tells his story to the jury, and it's very effective. He communicates very effectively through an iPad, through a TV screen, through an iPhone, through a laptop. So I can't imagine how effective this testimony is in a really small courtroom. Great idea, defense team. They thought they'd make these people all sort of shifty and look all suspect. Great witness. I think there's been great witnesses in this case. Fantastic witnesses.
When I say witness, I'm talking about civilian witnesses. So at 10:41, you hadn't interviewed a person. at 34 Fairview or associated civilians associated with this incident, correct?
At that point, no civilians have been interviewed, no.
But at 10:41, Sergeant, you contacted Good Samaritan Hospital to inform them that, quote, Mr. O'Keefe was struck in the face with a cocktail glass, end quote, correct?
I do not recall contacting Good Samaritan Hospital.
May I approach?
Yes.
I'd like you to take a look at this document, and if you wouldn't mind, pay special attention to the second page, the bottom paragraph where it's tabbed in pink.
This guy again is not going to be brought into anything like this nonsense. He's reading every line carefully, taking his time.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Having reviewed this, does this refresh your recollection that you contacted Good Samaritan Hospital and gave them an assessment, at least based on your investigation at that time?
That is not true.
What did you say to Good Samaritan Hospital?
I never spoke to Good Samaritan Hospital. That document is from the medical examiner's office.
I'm not asking you where the document is from.
So again, another Alan Jackson fail. Oh, you guys all catch that? So you all spoke with them, and I think he did. I don't know. I think it's like very some kind of very limited communication. But he's like, that report is from the medical examiner's office.
I'm asking you if the document says Trooper Yuri Buchanan called back at 10:41 stating the case is now being treated as a suspicion.
The objection sustained.
Did you call back to Good Samaritan Hospital and say that the investigation was being treated as a suspicious due to a domestic situation? Did you say that?
I never spoke to Good Samaritan Hospital.
Did you say that there's a possibility?
Are you guys catching that nodding? That sarcastic nodding. I didn't catch that the first time around. Watch this while Alan Jackson gives him these questions. He's had it. He's had it with Alan Jackson and his nonsense. He's playing with him here. Watch this. Watch this. I've never seen a witness do this. Check this out. A lot of confidence this guy had. And he should. I mean, highly decorated Marine. Oh gosh, we could go through. I got to go back and go through his credentials, but they're super impressive. Rose through the Marines, secret forces, some kind of secret forces. I thought he said the president. Then it became a sergeant. So I mean, you know, he's not having this stuff. Let's watch it. But watch his head, watch his facial expression as Alan Jackson asks this question. Just take a look at this.
The case is now being treated as a suspicion.
The objection sustained.
Did you call back to Good Samaritan Hospital and say that the investigation was being treated as a suspicious due to a domestic situation? Did you say that?
I never spoke to Good Samaritan Hospital.
Did you say that there's a possibility that D was struck in the face with a cocktail glass.
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you ever contact anybody at any medical facility and indicate that the investigation was being treated as a suspicious, in quotation marks, because the victim appeared to have been struck in the face by a cocktail glass? Did you ever say
Objection.
that?
Allow that. Did you ever say that?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, I did say that to the medical examiner's operations desk.
Okay, so when I was asking you if you ever said it to Good Sam, you said, no, that's not true. That's never happened. You were correcting me on the fact that it happened at the medical examiner's office, not at Good Sam.
I responded and answered your question honestly, yes.
Okay, so honestly, you
And then he's like, and honestly, so he's going to try to make that look like a liar. He's like, no, I answered the question you asked in the way that witnesses are only supposed to answer the question asked, briefly and to the point. And this is the challenge of lawyers, is to ask the right questions. And so now Alan Jackson is getting angry and frustrated and trying to show that he's a liar to the jury because he didn't ask the right question, the specific question. This is one of these great battles. I mean, if we, could give Yuri Buchanan, Sergeant Yuri Buchanan, a kind of nickname, Iron Witness Yuri Buchanan, something like that comes to mind. He just cannot be led down the wrong road. And boy, they must have, you can feel Alan Jackson's frustration with this right here. I'm just going to go back 5 seconds so you can catch the beginning of what he said.
I responded and answered your question honestly, yes.
Okay, so honestly, you did, in fact, at 10:41 a.m., indicate to another professional involved in the investigation that the circumstance was being treated as a physical assault at that point, correct?
I communicated our suspicions to the medical examiner's office.
And that was at 10:41 or thereabouts in the morning, correct?
That's correct.
Your initial investigation during those obviously critical hours, the beginning hours, led you to believe that there was at least a good possibility. You indicated that you made a phone call, that it was a physical altercation that led to John O'Keefe's death, correct?
That's correct, yes.
What steps did you take?
Yeah, because your client said, the defendant, as Sergeant Yuri Buchanan says about 100 times, he calls John O'Keefe the victim, very specific, just like a lawyer does. He's a wordsmith. He's very specific with the words he uses. It's just interesting. He says, I love how Alan Jackson here, just to get back on track and on point here, says, so you basically sent the investigation down this basically vehicular manslaughter route, on the road to second-degree murder route, without really ever, because your client communicated about a zillion times that she hit him. I'm sorry that when we heard, I hit him, saw a broken taillight, saw her broken taillight. I don't know. I'm not sure if you've seen we've seen a broken taillight, that we didn't think, oh, maybe he went into the home that no one saw him go into that night, that no one testified they went into that night. No one told us they went in that night, got beat up, and then also even the dog jumped him and then thrown miraculously in some way that we don't know on the lawn, on the corner edge of the lawn, in this really obscure part of the lawn. Sorry that we're so inept at our job that wasn't our first thought when we heard I hit him, matched with a broken taillight, that we didn't think up a crazy basement, pulling up the basement tiles conspiracy theory. How silly of us. How silly of all of us.
take, sir, in those moments, to determine whether someone in the house at 34 Fairview may have been involved in that physical altercation that you suspected at the time?
As investigations develop, we followed the evidence and statements made. The steps I took was Trooper Proctor and I proceeded to an eyewitness who was also present at the scene when the victim was discovered and interviewed Ms. McCabe.
And prior to interviewing Ms. McCabe, by the way, that was at Ms. McCabe's home, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Even though you believe that there may have been a physical altercation, you didn't ask anybody to come down to the station. Is that right? Any of the witnesses?
That's correct.
And you did not seek to actually go to the physical location of 34 Fairview in those next few hours?
That's correct.
Or the next few days, correct?
Not myself, no.
Okay. As a matter of fact, Trooper Proctor did not either, did he?
No, he did not.
You didn't secure the interior of the house as a potential crime scene. You certainly know how to do that, right?
That's a compound question. Do you want me to answer whether I did it or whether I know how to do it?
Well, I'll ask the question.
And he says, I'll ask the questions. See, he's communicating to the jury. This lawyer's trying to manipulate me. It's the first time I've ever heard a witness answer that's a cop-out question, ever. I was fascinated by that.
Question. If you can answer
Whether I
how to do that, right?
That's a compound question. Do you want me to answer whether I did it or whether I know how to do it?
Well, I'll ask the question. If you can answer it, please answer it.
Okay.
Can you answer that question?
I can answer that question.
Why don't you answer both of them then?
First portion is we did not secure the home as a crime scene. And the second portion, yes, I do know how to do that.
And you didn't, as a Massachusetts State Police official, you didn't secure the outside as a crime scene either, did you?
I did not know.
To your knowledge, nobody else from Massachusetts State Police ever did either, did they?
Yes, they did.
How was that done?
Again. Boom. Done. Again. Wrong answer for Alan Jackson. Alan Jackson thought he had a great cross-examination ready for a sergeant that was just going to walk right into all his traps. He wasn't ready for this. Absolutely, for me, delicious viewing. Let me know how you guys are feeling.
And when?
When members of our office and the CERT team responded to that location and secured the front yard grass area and processed it.
That was at 5:45, 6 o'clock that night, on the 29th?
I believe it was earlier, but I was not present, so I can't testify to the time.
So you don't know personally what they did to quote unquote secure or not secure the crime scene. You know they searched it, but in terms of securing it as a crime scene, you don't have personal knowledge to that.
I was not present.
Okay. You never took any photos of the interior of the house, correct?
I did not know.
You never caused CSSS to go inside the house and process.
Right. Here's more of this. You never searched, you never got a dog catcher and searched for all the possible dog suspects in the neighborhood. You didn't hire a dog specialist to go out with your team and look for a pack of wild dogs roaming the neighborhood. Things like that. Things that would prove their theory, but it's up to them to prove their theory, right? They went down the most logical, obvious, and I believe correct route in their investigation.
That house is a potential crime scene, correct?
I did not know.
No forensic criminalist at your direction ever went into 34 Fairview?
No, they did not.
And the people that you interviewed on January 29th, You already mentioned Miss McCabe. The other people were her husband, Matt McCabe, correct?
That's correct.
And her brother-in-law, Brian Albert. Is that right?
That is correct.
And all three of them were interviewed where?
They were interviewed at the McCabe residence.
Now, yesterday when you testified, did you indicate that Brian Albert was not present in the home when you interviewed Matt McCabe and Jennifer McCabe?
He was not present in the dining room when we were interviewing each individual separately.
So if all three of them testified that he arrived before you arrived, they would all be wrong.
I did not see him in the home when we arrived, no.
I want to switch gears real quick to a couple of the physical items that you testified about yesterday, specifically the gray shirt or the gray hoodie and the orange shirt. You and Trooper Proctor collected both of those items you indicated from the floor of the hospital at Good Samaritan, correct?
That's correct.
You testified that you and Trooper Proctor immediately bagged both of those items. They were sort of sopping wet, I think you said.
That's correct.
You indicated that the bags were so wet that you had to take the items back out of the bags and then lay them out on, I think you said, butcher paper. Is that right?
The items were soaked and wet. They were bagged, double bagged, to prevent leakage of physiological fluids and the moisture coming off of it. And then once they were transported to the office, they were laid out on butcher paper in order to dry naturally.
So you went from Good Samaritan.
So this is a part where the free Karen readers are screaming, look how inept they are. But you have to remember that it was crazy nor'easter, crazy snow. Everything was sopping wet. You know, when we talk about these solo cups or bags, I think a question to the free Karen readers would be, what would you do if it was your investigation? What would you do in a nor'easter when you don't have the proper evidence receptacles and you can't get to them? What would you do? So it's very easy to Monday morning quarterback when you're not in that position.
Directly to Dighton, correct?
That is correct.
And then you went from Dighton directly to the Canton Police Department, after which you had seized the vehicle, correct? And the phone.
We seized the phone in the vehicle in Dighton and then followed the tow truck straight to the Canton Police Department.
So at some point, if you had received or gathered the wet clothing at Good Sam, went from Good Sam to Dighton Canton PD, at what point that evening did you finally get those items of clothing out and laid out to dry?
It was late that night, around 10 or so.
So where were the items in the meantime?
They were stored in the back passenger compartment of my pickup truck.
They were right. So all this stuff we've been hearing about, crazy chain of events and how it was on Proctor's floor of his car, has been totally untrue and unfair. And I'd also ask my audience to ask themselves, of these people pointing fingers at the police, how many of these YouTubers would do this job, these public service jobs, and have the courage to do them, put their life on the line? Not many. Tim Harris asks, Roberta, how do you account for the unbridled feeding frenzy the internet and law tubers are dishing out on all the witnesses in Lally? I don't understand. Well, I'm not a big fan of most law tubers. If they were really excellent lawyers, they would be busy with their clients, civil or criminal, and not be making YouTube videos. I think many of them are disordered and greedy people. And we've seen that if you're following the Nick Rakita implosion. I wasn't surprised at all because I saw how dishonest he was during the Amber Heard and Johnny Depp trial. I sensed that in him, that he was a kind of monster who would be okay with the way that he treated his kids and the kind of charges that are against him now. So, yeah, I don't have a high opinion of them, and I think that they're grifting, and they're out to get what's theirs. I don't think anybody sincerely sees it this way. I mean, if you look, really think I have to cover Nick Rakita to really make my point further, but if you look at Nick Rakita and you look at the documents that have been leaked via Kiwi Farms, and there's still law tubers that are, I think the YouTube term is sweeping up after him, trying to make it okay. And even when they can't poke holes in any of it, they get really depressed. And not that they can't poke holes for the right reasons because he's wrongly accused. It's because they just can't grift and they can't get someone guilty off. I think they get off on it's a game to them. They get off on getting guilty people off, and that's an element of innocence fraud. When I'm talking about innocence fraud, it's done by lawyers in big part, main part, with the help of our press and with the help of activists and professors and journalists that like to dupe and con the gullible public. And there's a lot of money in it, trying to get a guilty person out of prison, or a wrongly accused, they so quote unquote, as they call it, wrongly accused, like Karen Reed, get her from being convicted. There's a lot of money, because the next step in this is, and there is some text messages, and it's unclear as to why, but Karen Reed says she was talking to civil lawyers, and it's unclear as if that's in relation to a possible witness harassment or some kind of harassed witness civil suit, like a civil suit from, say, Jen McCabe or whatever. Or what I think is more likely is that she was planning to sue for false arrest, wrongful arrest, all those things, sue the state, sue the town of Canton, blah blah blah, et cetera, and you see people winning multi-million-dollar judgments and stuff like this. She knows the grift really well. She seems familiar with it. So there's a lot of money. There's a lot of money in talking on the opposite side of the aisle.
In those double bags.
Correct.
Who took control of the items to then lay them out late that night at the office?
I do not recall.
Is that you or Trooper Proctor?
I don't recall. I don't remember.
At some point, obviously, it was getting late. You'd been on duty for a long time that day. You went home at some point, correct?
At some point, yes.
Did you wait for those clothes to dry before you went home, or did you leave that in Trooper Proctor's hands?
No, once they were laid out in the processing area in the office, we went home.
Okay. Who would have controlled those items of evidence when you left?
Well, they're under lock and key within the secure area of the district attorney's office, so they're secured. Nobody's in physical control watching guard over them.
Who had access to that area?
Troopers in our office.
Meaning you, obviously.
Yes.
Supervisor. Trooper Proctor as well, correct?
Yes.
Ultimately,
Dun dun dun. Trooper Proctor had access to the evidence. Shocker, guys. I thought this was completely ineffective, and not the own that he thought it would be. I mean, I know that it's getting to be a theme here, but what do they expect them to do? Have our hire guards to watch the evidence as they go home? No, they locked up and they went home for the night. It's It's amazing what they're trying to make seem nefarious in a big conspiracy. It's amazing.
Given the fact that he was the case officer, sort of in charge, the lead, he would have bagged those items up, been responsible for taking those items, tagging them, getting them stored wherever they needed to be stored and processed, correct?
As a case officer, he could direct other people to perform those tasks for him. The evidence officers in the office log in the evidence, and once it was dried, it was sealed up, bagged, and put into storage. As far as who actually performed those tasks, I do not know.
Well, yesterday, Your Honor, may I approach the course, right?
All right,
Sure, go ahead.
I'm gonna skip forward, guys, because I want to show you, and this is a little bit longer cross. I wanted to make sure you guys got the idea, but I wanted to go into more of the end of the cross-examination where they talk about the Sally port, which it's a word I've never heard before, Sally port, where they kept Karen Reed's car. But before they do that, there's a moment where Alan Jackson, there's on objection from the Commonwealth, shows Sergeant Buchanan the car going into Karen Reed's car, going into John O'Keefe's car. So many people, including me, believe that this was a staged scene to give reason why her back taillight was busted, but there were no pieces of taillight found. Only pieces of taillight found were in 34 Fairview. Now everyone's going to say Proctor, but it just doesn't. Proctor planted them, but there just was not time to do that. The timing doesn't work, and that's where it doesn't work for the defense. I think they thought that the jury won't be paying attention. I think they will be paying attention. Let's take a look at this.
I'm going to ask you, sir, if you'll pay close attention to what's been zoomed, and when the SUV gets close to it, I'm going to pause it and ask you another question. You go ahead and play this.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to this.
So why don't we pause?
Okay, let me move forward. Guys, hold on. Oh, too far. My apologies. Just going to go back a little bit.
Any movement that you may or may not see. Okay, pause it. Okay, in about the next 3 seconds, Sergeant, I'm asking you to pay special attention to the
It's such a light tap that Jackson has to alert the jury that in 3 seconds, if they blink, they will miss it. This isn't the kind, for everybody who's saying, how could the taillight be broken going 24 miles an hour in reverse with a human body and a glass being held, a human body holding a glass, meaning John O'Keefe's body. This is even more ridiculous. How are you going to break a taillight this way? It's the gentlest love tap, but it's all they have. And that seems to be a theme over and over again. The defense presenting something, but it's all they have. Just this small piece of evidence.
We can have the lights on. And you can take that down. Sergeant, were you able to see that video? I know it's not the clearest thing in the world. Were you able to see that video okay?
Yes, I
What
did.
did you notice about the rear wheel of the Traverse?
Based on the motion in the shot with the snow falling, it appears that there is movement, but the video speaks for itself.
What would you assess based on the movement of the rear wheel of the Traverse about whether or not the two vehicles came in contact with one another?
Objection.
Sustained.
They have just a moment on. Yes.
So this is the big gotcha by team Karen Reed here at the end, is that spoiler alert for everybody who hasn't seen this, but that the video in the Sally Port is a mirror image. And pay close attention. Again, these lawyers are wordsmiths, but what Alan Jackson didn't expect is he was up against another, I wouldn't call him a wordsmith, but he knows the game. Sergeant Buchanan knows the game. He's very careful with the words he chooses. He answers the questions very short and to the point, and in a way that can't be manipulated or taken down some kind of back road or misrepresented. So take a look at this back and forth about the Sally Port. It's pretty interesting.
Trying to use my time wisely, Your Honor. Yesterday, Sergeant, you were asked about a couple of videos related to the Sally Port garage. Do you have that in mind?
Yes.
Matter of fact, we watched one of them pretty specifically toward the end of the day yesterday. Did you actually, I want to talk about the one that is the clearer of the two, where you slip. You remember that one?
If you pull it up, I can.
I will in just a second.
Okay.
There was one where Mr. Lally paused it and you were slipping in front of the vehicle.
I don't recall myself slipping, no, but it was icy that day. So if there's documentation of me slipping, I might have happened.
Fair enough. I didn't mean anything by
He says, I don't mean anything by it. It's a real human moment here. I found interesting where Sergeant Buchanan, who seems to be quite the perfectionist, at least by his answers, seems to be a little bit embarrassed that they're now going to show a video of him slipping. And he's like, I don't remember slipping. You can see him feeling like, oh no, am I going to watch some real embarrassing footage of myself slipping in an icy Sallyport garage with Karen Reed's car in the background? And Alan Jackson is hyper aware of it and says, well, I don't mean anything about it. I'm not trying to publicly embarrass you. Interesting exchange.
by that, other than that was a moment that I thought you might recall to differentiate the videos. It's exhibit 446, but I don't think that's going to help you. All right, let's see if I can do this another way. Did you actually personally go to Canton PD to retrieve any or all of the videos of the Sally Port? You yourself?
I did go to Canton and collect already extracted video.
Okay.
But it was a portion of video surveillance. I didn't collect all of the video, so
When was the most recent time that you went to Canton to collect a portion of the video?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember. I'm sorry.
Did you review well, let me ask it this way. Did you collect the video that was sought on or about April 23rd or 24th this year? Meaning just a few weeks ago.
Did I collect it?
Correct.
I did not collect that video of April this year, no.
You're aware that the video that you saw yesterday was in fact collected after the trial started in April of 2024?
Objection.
Sustained.
Are you aware of when that video that we saw yesterday was collected?
Objection.
I am not aware.
Okay. Was yesterday the first time you'd seen that video?
No,
When had you seen that video previously?
a couple of weeks ago.
Okay. What were the circumstances in which you saw that video?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you have a meeting with the DA?
Objection.
Sustained.
did you ever have any kind of communication with Mr. Lally about your testimony?
Objection.
Sustained.
May we approach?
Yes.
Heisenberg says, excuse me, if John was really killed in a fight with 3 people, they wouldn't have any need to connect his death to Karen. They would simply testify the beating was in self-defense. None of that occurred at all. Yeah, I've seen that argument before. I think it's a good one. Thank you, Heisenberg. Yeah, that seems to be most logical, especially if this is all about the blue wall of silence. They often bring up Occam's razor, or at least our side does in this, meaning when you have 2 equally good theories, you go with the simplest one. But I don't think these are 2 equally good theories. I think you have one very logical deduction, and you have one crazy conspiracy theory that doesn't even work from beginning to end. How did he get in the house with no one seeing him? Okay, well, maybe snuck in, right? Oh, they're all lying. Okay, right. They're all lying. But well, then how did they put him on the lawn? How did they plant the evidence with the time, with the time
You are
that we
unmuted.
know that they have? It doesn't make any sense.
May I?
Yes.
Thank you. Sergeant, did you have any meetings or communications with Mr. Lally in anticipation of your testimony?
Yes.
When was that?
It was about 2 weeks ago, and then last week, I believe.
And what was discussed? Generally?
Generally, we discussed the portions of the case that I would be presenting.
Did you write a report about your communications with Mr. Lally?
No, I did not.
Were you shown any of the videos that you've seen here in anticipation of your testimony?
Not during the first meeting. I did review a video during the second time.
Okay, and that video was that you did see the second time was the interior video of the Sally Port that we saw yesterday, correct?
I'm just trying to remember exactly what video I saw. I had reviewed videos outside of our meeting, so I don't remember exactly what video Mr. Lally showed me.
But you do recall seeing the video that you saw yesterday, the sort of clear one that has the crime scene taping put up and all that. You have seen that one before,
Yes,
and that was with Mr. Lally, correct?
that is not correct because I do not recall when I saw that video or what video I saw with Mr. Lally.
I see. All right. I'd like to talk about that exhibit 446 for a second, and then I'll show it.
There's a danger here where where the witness will get so specific that he can look evasive, but I don't think that he's crossed that line. Meaning, I'm not going to say which video I watched with Mr. Lally because I don't remember which video it was. That's a perfectly honest answer. But it could look evasive
To you. You indicated that the video all the videos, everything that you saw yesterday was true and accurate, correct? Based on your memory of the events that were memorialized in the video?
The video captures events taking place in an accurate fashion, yes.
In an accurate fashion. All right, that's what I wanted to find out. And after you watched the video, I think you were asked by Mr. Lally, does the video show you or Trooper Proctor having access to or messing with in any way that right rear tail light in any fashion? And you said, never.
I was asked if at any point Trooper Proctor and I had came into contact, I believe, or touched the vehicle, in that portion of the vehicle, and I said never. We never touched the vehicle prior to it being properly processed with a search warrant.
And that was specifically his question was to, and your answer was to the right rear portion of the vehicle, right? That right rear taillight.
The right rear damaged taillight, correct.
With the court's permission, I'd like to play a portion of Exhibit 446.
Okay.
Before we begin playing it, Mr. Bates, if you wouldn't mind, may I inquire, Your Honor, of the witness, just to lay a foundation? Sergeant, do you recognize this as being the video that we saw yesterday?
It does look accurate.
Okay.
Yes.
I just want to make sure we're on the same page. This is 446, just so you have it in mind if I reference that. Space, if you could play that. And I think it's runtime 120. Pause it. Do you recognize that as the video we saw yesterday?
Yes, I do.
Very briefly, if you could move to time of day, 5:37:05. Court's permission, can we play at this point?
Yes.
All right, that shows the vehicle coming into the Sally Port, and we're looking at which side of the vehicle?
So that is the driver's side of the vehicle. What that video depicts is a mirror collection. Although mirrors are accurate representation of what you're seeing, it's just inverted. So that is the driver's side of the vehicle. I do not know why it is inverted, but that's the way it was presented, collected and presented from Canton Police.
Can you see a timestamp or a time and date stamp on the bottom of that? It's in blue.
I cannot know.
Okay. Does it appear that time and date stamp, if you can't read every letter on it, that is in correct order? In other words, that's not inverted.
I cannot read it, no.
All right, let's go ahead and play this for a second. Who is that just got out of the car?
I do not know. I think that's the tow truck driver. He would have the only access to the vehicle. We did not touch the vehicle.
Who's that on the left?
I missed that. I was looking down at the laser pointer. I do not know. I know for a fact I'm the gentleman that's wearing a dark olive drab state police baseball style hat, and Trooper Mike Proctor's wearing a winter hat.
Trooper Proctor's wearing what?
A winter hat.
Back up. That was playing, and I didn't realize it was playing while you were talking. Stop. And stop. Yesterday, when you testified, you indicated that the two individuals in this scene were you and Trooper Proctor, correct?
Not correct. There was two individuals in the rear of the vehicle. I shined my light to. That was me and Trooper Proctor.
Do you see Trooper Proctor toward the back of the rear of the vehicle there?
I can't tell because of what the head is. I just know that Trooper Proctor was wearing a black hat.
Which the person in that, in the video to the left, to the rear of the car is wearing a black hat, correct?
I can't tell. I don't want to be locked into a statement where later on you show me that it's somebody else magically. I can't testify to that.
There's no magic about this. It's your testimony.
Right. See, he's like, "Yeah, I'm not, I know what you're about, Alan Jackson. I'm not going to be brought into something. I don't know. It would just be a guess. I'm not up here to guess."
I'm just asking you what you see.
I don't see that. No.
Let's go ahead and play at this point. You see the person toward the back of the vehicle walking toward the opposite side of the SUV?
I do.
What area does he appear to be going to?
He appears to be going towards the rear passenger side of the vehicle, although it does not appear so because the video is inverted, a mirror image. That's where he's going.
And Sergeant Buchnick, you testified for at least a half an hour about this video yesterday, correct?
I'm sorry, it was a long day. I don't know the timing of how long I testified.
You significantly testified about this video yesterday.
Right. And you never told us that it was a mirror image. Listen to this. This gets pretty interesting.
Did you not?
I testified about this video.
And you testified that it was true and accurate, correct?
Correct.
You testified that it was reflective of your observations of what was happening in that Sally port that evening, correct?
I testified that this is a accurate scene and collection of video evidence from the Sally Port.
And as that truck sits in that Sally port, just like this, it appears from all perspectives that what we're looking at is the passenger side of the car, and that right rear taillight is right there shining in our face, correct? From this perspective.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
From this perspective, from the perspective that the jurors are looking at,
Okay.
from all indications, that would appear to be the right side of the truck, the passenger side of the truck, and that taillight that you can see is the right rear taillight from this perspective, correct?
The way it presents itself, yes.
And yesterday, during the entirety of your questioning by Mr. Lally, not once did you mention that this video is actually completely inverted.
I did not know.
Mr. Lally didn't ask you if it was inverted, correct?
That's correct.
And if I hadn't gotten up here and begun questioning you, that would be left uncorrected, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
The person with the winter cap appears to walk.
Here's Alan Jackson and his perpetual line crossing. Get ready for it. You could see the judge's chair coming up to the microphone before that objection even got said. She knew she was going to have to sustain it. And there was no, she just knew it. Her chair starts moving right away as Alan Jackson is saying his inappropriate, hostile question.
Directly to the what ultimately should be the right rear taillight of this car, correct?
That's the vicinity, yes. That's where he is. Yeah.
Pause it. I'd like you to pay attention to the right rear of this car. And I know we're completely backward, but it's the far corner of the car. Do you see a person's head there?
It appears as if someone's still there.
And that person is located at or near what portion of the car?
All right, who's by the rear tail light? Can anyone guess? Can anyone guess who it might be? Of all the sergeants in the world, who it might be?
In real life or as it's depicted?
Is the person near in real life, near the right rear tail light of the car?
Yes.
Matter of fact, standing there hovering around it, correct?
We don't know the distance that they are in proximity to the actual vehicle. We just know that they're behind the vehicle. That
Looks like it's pretty close, doesn't it, Sergeant?
Objection.
Sustained.
Does that look like he's in close proximity to the right rear tail light?
as I said, I can't tell how far away he is from the vehicle.
His head's right there, sir. You can't tell that he's right next to the right rear tail light?
Objection.
Sustained.
Yeah, badgering again, crossing the line again. You can't, this is something I noticed with Alan Jackson. He pushes and pushes and pushes. When he makes mistakes, he'll push in a different direction to try to get a win. He just is extremely tenacious and aggressive.
I want you to pay attention to what that person does as soon as the other person comes out from behind that car. See if you see him move. Stop it. Do you see that person move?
I saw movement in the frame, yes.
Right when the other person is in eyesight of the person toward the right rear, correct?
I mean, the video speaks for itself.
Yeah, it does.
No.
Objection, Your Honor.
The objection sustained. No commenting, Mr. Jackson. We've talked about that.
I'm going to ask the
Right. He knew he was crossing the line. He got a million objections and he stepped again. These are these are habitual line crossers. Petty Yannetti and no traction Jackson. I mean, come on. That was so unnecessary. Yes, it does speak for itself. This amazing mirror image. Oh, and it's going to push on with this mirror image stuff. I mean, if this is what they have, I mean, he's toting around this mirror image stuff like it is the OJ's glove. Please tell me what it proves. Please tell me the malfeasance that it's evidence of. I don't get it. I just don't get it.
Mr. Bates, back it up because there's one other issue I want you to pay attention to, if you can, right at this moment or right before this moment, and that is the timestamp. We back it up maybe 10 seconds. Right about there. Don't play yet. Instead of paying attention to the individuals, I'm going to ask you, can you see, may I approach the screen yard? Yes. Can you see the timestamp at 5:37 and 37 seconds p.m.? Can you see that from where you're at?
No, I cannot.
Me neither. That's why I don't like that. So, let's play it for about 10 seconds. Pause it. Did you see another person just appear toward the rear end of the car?
There was a fog of some sorts. It did appear as if a person was actually in. There was two people back there, and two people walked away, or one person walked away.
Timestamp.
Mr. Buchanan, have you never heard the famous adage, if the image is a mirror, you must clear her? Doesn't that sound like the perfect adage for my client?
Jumped to 5:38:01. Correct?
I cannot see the timestamp, sir.
Did it appear that there was an anomaly? There was a portion of that video that was deleted. Or it's missing, not deleted, but just missing.
Objection.
Can you tell that? Does it appear that way to you, Sergeant?
No, Your Honor, I cannot tell what is happening with the video.
If you take a close look at there's a classic police car in that Sally Port, correct?
There's an antique vehicle there, yes, yes.
If you take a close look at the trunk of that vehicle, see the word police?
Yes, I believe I can read that, yes.
And it's backward, correct?
It is mirrored, correct.
That's a good indication that this is an inverted video, right?
It appears that way, yes.
And if we were to fast forward at 5:42, not another 20 seconds. There you go. Can we just play it at this point? No. Pause it. You see the Sallyport garage came down?
Yes,
You see a number on the garage? Is
I do.
that correct?
What is correct?
Does the number appear correct? How do you make it for?
No, the number's in the mirror image, yes.
I just wanted to make the point. Everything in this video is completely backward, correct?
It's not backwards, it's mirrored, reversed. You can look yourself in the mirror in the morning, you still see your own face. It's not backwards.
But my mirror image is not an accurate depiction of who I am. My
Check.
actual physical appearance is who I am, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
A mirror.
I mean, this is getting like philosophical. If I look in the mirror, is it really me? Is that really a correct image? I mean, come on. This is, I've never seen, I think this is one of the most ridiculous arguments. This is, shout out to all the Dan Markel watchers in the audience who followed me through that Charlie Adelson's trial. This is Rashbaum level lawyering we're seeing here. It is a losing point, and he's hammering it home like it's like, you know, it's mega importance. And of course, it could be just to shout out to the free Karen readers to get them outraged, but it's a nothing burger, more than a nothing burger. What would be the significance if it were the image were reversed and that were presented to the jury? What would be the significance difference?
Mirror image, Sergeant, is not an accurate video of this, is it?
Objection.
It's a mirror image by definition.
Sustained. Ask it differently, Mr. Jackson.
Your Honor, thank you. I don't think I need to. I would like to mark.
The ambulances are coming because people are dying. They're ODing on Alan Jackson's inane questions. It's just too much. That was an absurd line of questioning there. Thank heavens he stopped. I really thought he was never going to quit with that mirror image stuff. And that's the best they got. They thought this was like some kind of, I'm convinced that this, again, for those who are tuning in late, we're watching Sergeant Uri Buchanan's testimony in the Karen Reed trial, his cross-examination by Alan Jackson, who's an attorney from California. He was Kevin Spacey's attorney. He was Harvey Weinstein's defense attorney. And as a prosecutor, he's most known as a prosecutor for not only running for district attorney in Los Angeles, but for prosecuting Phil Spector who was convicted of successfully prosecuting him. He got a hung jury the first time and got him on the second time for the murder of Lana Clarkson. Heisenberg says her cult made it seem no video about her car being there existed. They were wrong about this, his belt and everything else. Yeah, great point, Heisenberg. They were wrong about the horrible chain of custody. Proctor's sitting on Proctor's car floor for how many ever days. That turned out to be untrue. How many things? I mean, why aren't the free Karen readers? And this is really what's going through my mind watching this. Watched it this morning live. Been streaming it for those who don't know. Why aren't the free Karen readers shouting to get their money back? Have they been so groomed and conned by this movement that they just can't see it? But I know that some of them are waking up, because I get a lot of comments that gone are the "she's innocent, you're crazy" comments. Not too many of those coming around, and more "you're crazy because there's reasonable doubt. I can't believe you can't see it." They've moved from absolute innocence to reasonable doubt. But where's the doubt? I don't see it.
I have a, we can bring the mics up.
Let's wait.
I have a thumb drive that I'd like to have marked with the court's permission.
Does Mr. Lally know what's on this thumb drive without you telling us?
I do not.
Okay.
Who is eating in the courtroom? It's so revolting. Microphone like that. Let me know in the comments if you know. I just keep hearing it through my headphones. It's driving me crazy.
Approach, and I can certainly bring it up.
We're trying to wrap up our morning. It's marked for identification.
If I may, Your Honor, I'd like to play the first 10 seconds of that video.
No. We'll come to sidebar.
Okay, so that's the end of the day for today. So when the judge comes back, what she says is that she believes that this trial will be wrapped up by the end of June. And that they're going to be doing full days. Full days. So every day, I think, but Friday, what is it? Is it Tuesday next week? Excuse my slip there. So used to them having Fridays off. So every day but Tuesday next week, all full days, long days, I'm sure. And they're really going to try to gut this out to the finish line. But Lally has presented, what he's done is he's not only presented his case, he's argued against the defense's case at the same time, a strategy which I think is great, which has been highly criticized by other folks who I think are, even with the conversations I've had with one attorney at least, said, no, you don't want to wait to get into rebuttal witnesses and stuff. And I don't even think he would be allowed rebuttal witnesses the way that this has crawled along. That once people have it in their mind that maybe a conspiracy is possible, it's very hard to convince them that a conspiracy didn't occur. So it's much better for him to really argue it all out in his case now, instead of bringing in rebuttal witnesses. And people forget that this is a trial. It's not a play. It's not a movie. Excuse me. This is not for our entertainment. Trials have a very different pace than a movie or a TV show. We like to think, because we've seen so many trials and TV shows, that they're exactly, and we've seen some really theatrical, fast-moving trials. Jodi Arias comes to mind just off the bat, but generally there's a lot of many days where it's very slow moving, and you know, you can see Turtle Boy in there. He's watching the trial, so his computer. There's one shot of him where his computer was lit up because he's watching the trial to watch the comments, because I don't think he can follow it all in real time. I just know that from going to court and developing. Things move very fast. You can't rewind. You're not sure always what you heard. It's like everything's in a very thick accent, this legalese. You're not sure of all the different, I don't know what you call it, the different rules and regulations and how things go. So it's a skill that you have to develop, and it's an ear that you pick up. So that accent, like that thick accent, it's like hearing everything through like a super thick accent at first. You get the hang of it when you go a lot, and you can pick up very quickly what's going on. So that's what I have for today. I guess what I'll end on is, will Trooper Proctor be the state's witness? Will he be the defense witness? Maybe I'll get a poll going in my community tab. Or will he not testify at all? Is Alan Jackson, I'm almost certain that is his Trooper Proctor's cross-examination, or a lot of it. Will they not be able to call? Will they have not developed enough of a foundation? I don't know. Can they call Trooper Proctor? I think they can call any witness that they want. But what questions, what areas can they go into in direct? You can go into a lot. Seems like you have a little bit more freedom in cross-examination on impeachment and stuff, because the Commonwealth has already opened the door in a lot of areas where you might not have foundation to go into on direct. That's what I'm thinking, not being a lawyer and just being someone who likes to watch trials. Heisenberg says her cult screaming for refunds will be the biggest embarrassment of this whole thing. If that happens, the entire world will be laughing at them. I think anybody can be groomed or conned, but it's the people who participated in the harassment of witnesses, the harassment of the victim's family, that I won't have any feeling for. You know, anybody can be groomed and conned into these innocence fraud campaigns, but people that took part in the really vicious, cruel part of this campaign, it's all cruel, but it's because it's all untrue essentially. But really the actively cruel part, nasty part of this campaign, and the ones that led it, like Karen Reed and Aidan Carney, I'd like to see them face consequences. So that's what I have for today. But let me know where you think this is going. And if you think also we're going to see what's going to happen, I encourage you to read. Hold on one second. Read the filing from the Commonwealth and let me know if you think that this is something that you've been complaining about all along, that the defense hasn't been giving them material, hasn't let them know, hasn't given them the complete witness information. We heard this before the trial started. They were complaining about this. What are their credentials? What are they going to testify for? So I don't think that they're in a really good position when it comes to Monday morning at 8:30. I think it's going to be very bad for them. I would think it, but this is a very defense-friendly judge. You never know. I couldn't argue with that argument. You can't. How is the Commonwealth supposed to prepare 2 weeks before these witnesses when they have their own witnesses that they have to prepare for testimony? To cross-examine 4 different witnesses. So it may be some kind of compromise also from the judge. She may look at anything that the defense has handed over and say, maybe you can have one witness but not the other. But I would think that the dog witness is with the no dog DNA witness already being presented. That was also an argument in the filing. I would think that that would be out, but I don't know. Like I said, this is a very defense-friendly judge. That's what I have for today. Please hit the thumbs up, guys. Subscribe to the channel. Share this episode. And I'll be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern. Have a great night, everybody.